So today I've set this up. It takes a while for the cocoa butter to melt, and so I thought I'd just start by melting the cocoa butter and speaking a bit about cannabis absorption rates. Unfortunately, my thing didn't work in their printer upstairs, so I have a couple of screens here. And the first is a bit of an anatomy lesson about why we use suppositories. And of course, this is hard to see. You can come up here and ask questions about it. I just want to point it out briefly that there's the rectum is supplied with blood vessels that go to several areas of your body. So the first blood vessel is the great portal vein, and it goes directly to the liver. But there are also other blood vessels that go straight into the venous system, meaning it goes straight into the heart. So the cannabinoids stay in the blood rather than getting into the liver. And this diagram shows where is the best placement of the suppository. I'll leave it out here and you can see it. Though I've been making suppositories for a long time, and I don't think people actually use a measuring stick to figure out how far they get it in there. So my thing is, if you can get it in there and it stays, it's good. Apparently if you stick it way too high, you will get a more head high, but I find that for most applications, if you just get it inserted and lie down for 20 minutes, you will get the effects. Now the next thing I want to talk about is absorption rates.
So what is the best position?
Is to lie on your right hand side. Insert the suppository and lay on your right hand side so that it it stays in the rectum and that it starts sliding more towards the intestine. So the absorption rates of cannabis, I was quite surprised. I always thought that you'd get your best absorption rate by smoking it directly. Well, if you use it by oral, it's backwards. By inhalation, you get about 10 to 15% efficacy. By oral ingestion, you get about 30% efficacy, 30 to 40%, which means that 30 to 40% of the THCs in your dose are getting absorbed into the body. So when you smoke it, it's quite wasteful. But when you insert it rectally, over 60% of the cannabinoids get used. So if you're not using suppositories, you're wasting your money.
Do you know what the absorption rate is when you ingest it orally, did you say?
The absorption rate orally is about
30%.
Yeah, 25 to 30%. This is getting really dark.
And suppositories?
Suppositories is 65, over 60 to up to about 80%. And you don't feel the high. That's but you do feel the effects because I recently tried indica versus sativa, and I did the sativa at night, and I was up to 4 o'clock in the morning. And it wasn't an uncomfortable awake. I was just very happy to be awake. It was the strangest thing. So the strains make a difference as well as how, what the effects are.
Sativa is more stimulating.
Sativa is more of a head high, so it does affect your head in a way, but not as if you were smoking it. I would say it's a much more gentle effect.
Yeah.
So the first thing, I use cocoa butter, which is the most natural thing. Some people use a special kind of fumigated glycerin. But I like using cocoa butter. Coconut oil is too soft and you have to keep it frozen. Cocoa butter, as you can see, it's a warm day today. It's still in one piece, so your suppositories won't melt in your hand. See, it's not melting in your hand. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring out. I'm planning on making 50 suppositories today. So I'm measuring out 100. These are each. These are molds. I don't know if you can get them here.
Yes.
You can buy them on the internet. They're not that cheap, but they work really well. The other thing you can use is a straw and cut the straw up. But this is the most sanitary method, and I noticed that
In Australia they sell silicone ones.
yes, I've used those too. If you're just doing it for home use, that's an excellent way because you can wrap them yourself.
Right.
It's just if you're doing it for patients, for suppositories, you want to make sure that the patient knows that they're clean and sanitary. So now we come to dosing, and somehow this beautiful resin from my house got stuck in my luggage, or not in my shipment, and it somehow was all the other jars.
Just somehow got stuck in the luggage.
So this is pure cannabis resin that I make in Canada. I make it for cancer patients. I use it topically. I myself had melanoma, and I used it for about 6 or 8 months, and the melanoma basically layer after layer after layer came out of my skin and hasn't come back. And I was supposed to have surgery, and they were going to take a 3-inch by 5-inch piece out of my skin. Just cut it away and sew it back up. No big problem, right? So I found that was very effective. So cannabis suppositories, the resin, is what I recommend because the olive oils you're using are just not strong enough, and you need to have a good. If you add too much oil to the cocoa butter, it'll just do what coconut oil does. It'll just turn into a mush. So the more concentrated resin you can put into your suppositories, the better result you're going to achieve.
That's from the buds, not from the root.
Pardon? This is the there was a demonstration earlier by Radic Al, and he was making he was showing how to do an alcohol extraction. So basically, you put your buds in frozen alcohol, you shake it up really well, you strain it out. I always wash my buds 3 times to make sure I get every last bit of THC. And then you can either slowly evaporate it out in the sun or use a rice cooker, but please people outdoors, do all this outdoors. Do not ever use alcohol or any kind of fuming solvents indoors, because what happens with the solvents is you may not even notice, because as they cook off, they don't actually blow up. They go down, and they go down to floor level. And if you have a furnace or a hot water tank that comes on, when they kind of cool on the floor, and they can even go into a basement. And when that pool hits the flame, your whole property, your whole house becomes a bomb. So I've got
this smoke coming from the cooker. I don't know. It's like under here.
this side's not on.
It might have been some tobacco that was there earlier on.
Or maybe it's brand new. It's just out of the box, so maybe it has
It's
some.
no fire.
So what I've done is I've gently melted the cocoa butter, and as soon as there's only a few pieces left, I took it off the heat, because if you overheat cocoa butter, it wrecks it. and when you make the suppositories, they'll just shatter. So you need to make sure that you don't overheat your cocoa butter.
Is there a quantity you put in there to make your 50?
Yes, so each one of these is 2 milligrams.
Yeah.
So I put in the bag 100 milligrams of cocoa butter. But you have to make sure that you read the instructions on your...
You mean 2 grams?
yeah, this is a 2-gram mold.
So you need 100 grams of the cocoa butter.
Yeah, I need 100 grams of the cocoa butter.
It's okay, you said milligrams.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. No.
Next time I'm coming a week early.
1,000 milligrams.
You know how you get they squeeze
The rosin? Yes, you can use that too.
and then you don't need any process of alcohol.
You don't need, if you use the rosin, I haven't been making rosin, so I'm not that familiar with it. You use basically a hair straightener and parchment paper to squeeze a bud really hot, and it exudes all the resin, and they call it live resin because it hasn't been treated, and it's usually a very light honey color, and it has a lot of terpenes in it. But for my purposes, it's hard. It's not that easy to make, and I make a lot of medicine for quite a few patients.
But just wondering, can you use that method if you're using it for a neurological problem? Can you do that quickly and just eat it?
Just what?
From when you squeeze the straight stuff, get the oil out, can you eat that stuff? Like if you're treating it for, say, OCD or something.
Yes, you can eat it, but I would recommend for OCD that you put it into olive oil, because just the straight resin would be much too powerful a dose. You would have to really reduce the dose, or just take a little tiny piece.
Because when I met Rick Simpson and he told me to get it in, 20% THC, he said he wanted me to get the really strong stuff.
But you want to take only tiny amounts. You don't want to take all the rosin. You just want to start with very small amounts.
So that'd be all right.
So now I've got 100 milligrams, which is going to make 50 suppositories. I need some help with math here.
100 grams.
I've got 100 grams, and I'm going to put in 1 milligram of resin, right? Is that right?
No, there'd be still be
1
1
gram.
gram.
1 gram of resin, that's right.
And that gets divided by
50. And so you know the exact amount. This resin per gram has 780 milligrams of THC.
Did you say 700 grams per gram of THC?
Yeah, per gram, 780 grams of THC.
So it might seem like this.
Oh, jeez. Well, no, this thing is, some reason, because it's hot, it's kind of jumping around, but that's okay. So I've got about 1 gram of resin in here. I'm just going to turn this on really low, just so that it melts out. So you need to stir this really well, that it gets all mixed in with the cocoa butter.
I'm learning it.
In this case, I have 100 grams.
By the way, we are going on to YouTube.
So with the silicone molds, it's not really that important with waiting for the temperature to turn down, but with these plastic molds, depending on where you get them, they can be more or less sensitive. We found some shrink up. They just kind of shrivel if you put it in too hot. So I always do the baby bottle test. So if it's good on your wrist, if it's good for a baby, then and now all that remains is that I pull the
It is pretty easy, isn't it?
It's very easy. It's time consuming, but it's also very meditative.
And how many of these can you put up your rear end?
As many as you want.
Just gradually so you build up tolerance.
Well, I would not add more suppositories. I would do, say, depending on your condition, 1 to 4 times a day.
What?
1 to 4 times a day.
Okay.
And once you're at a comfortable dose and you feel you need to dose up, then you would add more resin to the mix.
Yay.
So this is 1,000 divided by, that's 20. So these are each going to be 20 milligrams of resin and about 15 milligrams of THC per suppository.
How much?
About 15 milligrams. Is my math right?
That's 750 milligrams out of the brain. It's pure THC. It's 250 milligrams in a gram of resin is actually THC.
Got it.
So you can say that, roughly 20 milligrams.
So are there any questions? I can answer questions while doing this.
You're a woman.
Very boring. This is very boring.
Store in the fridge.
Sorry?
Store in the fridge.
You actually don't have to. Once they're sealed, if they happen to if you leave them in a hot car, they will melt. But if they're sealed properly, you can just pull them down and they will hold their shape. I took some to Costa Rica and left them there for 6 months and then opened them up and they were fine. I just left them out on the counter. And there was no change in them.
Yeah. 75 milligrams of THC.
About 4 doses a day.
Yeah.
Starting off with.
No, you would start off with 1 dose. You want to start off really low. So 1 dose a day. And like I said, it depends on the condition. Some people use these for cancer. Some people use them for pain. So for pain, a good dose. This is a very low dose. So normally my doses are 50 and 100 and 200. 200 is a big dose. But 100 is a regular dose. That would be really good for someone who has bad back pain. 50 milligrams is what I use for the female suppositories for PMS.
No, it turns into 20.
What would that be for the cancer?
Because she's
Sorry?
Cancer?
For cancer, so your target rate for cancer is to ingest or to use 1 gram of resin a day. If you have cancer, it depends on what type of cancer you have, where it's located. You may want to also ingest
Mine's in my spine.
in your spine. Okay. Where in your spine?
L1.
L1. Okay. So this would be really good because along with the blood flow, what I couldn't find any research on, there is a lot of lymph flow in your lower abdomen, and the lymph actually absorbs fats. So the lymph will, as well as the blood, will absorb the fats and take them to where you need. The other thing for you, I would suggest if it's in your spine, I would suggest castor oil packs infused with cannabis medicine to be applied locally.
Can they be used vaginally as well?
Yes, I
irritation?
make a whole line of vaginal ones. I add essential oils for PMS, for menopause, for
What about reproductive cancers and things like that?
for cancer, and also for vaginitis.
What?
Vaginitis.
Vaginosis.
Oh, is that a condition?
When you get an overgrowth of some bacteria and they
Bacteriosis.
make it smelly down there.
What do you suggest essential oils to use for vagina suppositories?
It depends on what condition you're using them for. You wouldn't use the same ones for PMS as you would for cancer.
Okay, have you any suggestions for those
For
conditions?
cancer? So for cancer, except for if it's estrogen or hormone-driven one,
No.
no.
Reproductive.
No, well, yes and no. Some cancers have hormone receptors in it than others.
So for the ones that, and again, I'm not a doctor, I'm a layperson. I only learned about this through a naturopath who I work with, and patients have come to me and said, I have this, and I've said, well, we can try this, and just by trying things, I found certain things work.
So which ones don't you use for estrogen based?
I don't use frankincense. I was told by my naturopath not to. So I don't simply because he said not to.
Didn't say why.
He said something about the estrogen ones shouldn't, and I'm gonna get that clarified eventually. But right now,
It's so much.
well, he's a naturopath and he's been working with Cannabis Medicine for over 10 years. So I go by his guidance. However, he was totally into the ingestion of the Cannabis Medicine, and I finally convinced him that his clients should try suppositories. So now I'm pleased to say I convinced the doctor to use suppositories for his patients. So we actually need a fridge. That's them, first 30.
Yes?
Not now, when do the maths again, it's only 30 suppositories.
Oh, you only got 30 out.
I only got 30. I've got another 20 right here.
Here comes a volunteer dedicated to be a fridge
Michael said I'm the one
magnet.
that fills in the gaps with every needle.
She's got more. Have you got more in the...
I've got 2 more strips to do, but no,
You
but
could take
they
some
won't
now.
fit. They
You want
don't
to
fit.
volunteer to fill those up too?
Oh, you've got
Take
more.
some now and put them in the... Is it a fridge or the freezer? Which one?
They'll cool down really quick in the freezer. In 10 minutes,
10 minutes I bring them up.
in 10 minutes I can seal them, and as long as they're pretty solid on top, I can seal them, and then I can give them out and half sealed because they won't melt.
So do you put it in the fridge or
In the freezer.
In the
Freezer.
freezer?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. I'll be
Freezer, and then we're going
back in
to seal
10.
them.
Back in 10 minutes.
So the little plastic stand is really handy, but if you have a friend that does woodwork, you can make one out of woodwork, or I've even made one out of a cardboard box. Right
Do you want me to make up something?
Yeah, I have some paper in here just to
It's going for a good cause.
Sita, you know when you're making the resin with alcohol, and rather than heating it, you want to evaporate it in the sun, slow evaporation. How long would you estimate for the evaporation of the complete evaporation of the alcohol?
It depends on how much alcohol you have and the temperature outside. And I really recommend the rice cooker because I don't believe that you're going to end up with much THC acid. Because the heat from the sun starts converting it. I mean, you're going to end up with some THC acid, but the sun starts converting it for you.
You mean breaking it down? You mean,
Yeah. So when you apply heat to raw cannabis THC, it blows off the oxygen molecule and it becomes THC. It goes from THCA to active THC.
But you're saying that in the sun evaporation degrades the THC more than heating it as rice cooker?
No. It degrades it in the same way. Maybe not quite as much, but it still degrades it.
So if you do it in the sun, how do you know when the alcohol is completely evaporated?
When there's no more, when it's all sticky. It's really, really sticky. That's another reason.
Oh, that's a
Okay.
All right.
So that's another reason you may want to do it in the rice cooker. Because when you do it in the rice cooker, at the very end, you add about 10 drops of water. And then you cook it until the water is evaporated. And that, because alcohol boils at 73 degrees and water boils at 100 Celsius. So if you add the water, it will make your, it will raise the temperature past the point of where any alcohol can physically be present.
I thought oil heated at a higher temperature than water.
Sorry?
Oil heats at a higher temperature than water?
Oil will boil, I don't know how high you can heat oil. That's why you need water. Deep frying, you know, when you deep fry stuff, it goes up 375 degrees.
Do you decarbotulate before you make your resin?
No, when I'm cooking it in the rice cooker, it gets decarboxylated.
That's right.
And the rice cooker temperature when it's on low, is it the same as like a traditional slow cooker?
No, a rice cooker is completely different from a slow cooker. A rice cooker has a gauge inside that tells the machine when all the water's gone.
So when you're doing it with the rice cooker, you need to actually put it on, or do you have to put the button down?
Oh yeah, when you have a rice cooker, you have to put it on full boil. You have to do it outside. You have to put it on full boil, put a fan on it so that it blows all the fumes away. And then once most of the alcohol is boiled off, then you add about 10 drops of water, and as the alcohol boils, when the alcohol's finished boiling off, then it will be the water that's boiling off. So it helps to swirl it in a pot. Like when you've got the rice cooker, it helps to swirl it, make sure you've got every last bit of alcohol.
Can you sell these in Canada?
Yes, I do.
How much do you sell them for?
Pardon?
How much do you sell them for in Canada?
It depends on the dosage.
So something like with this low dose that you're
Can't think right now. I mostly make it. Trying to think if I'm making 50. So the wholesale price of a 50 milligram would be about $1.75.
Can I put my order in? Bulk? We could do a bulk order every time. $1.75 a suppository.
That's wholesale, so the dispensaries are probably selling them for, $3 to $4. Okay, well they're all filled now.
This.
I'm just gonna leave that there.
And then you'd have to
This hot thing away. Pardon? Oh no, you don't add water to this. This is when you make the, where did I put the resin? When you make the resin, after most of the alcohol is boiled off, because you make the tincture and then you boil off the alcohol to make the resin. In order to make sure that there's no alcohol left, you add a bit of water, which raises the temperature of the resin to the point past where the alcohol can be present.
So what do you usually like sticky goo off the rice cooker? Like all the resin. Well, how do you extract so you don't lose any of it? Like it's gone down to a sticky paste.
Well, then what I do is I turn the rice cooker on edge and I let it all cool in the corner, and I usually just pour it into a 100 ml glass jar, just slowly. And if you're going to do another batch, I use a scraper, a silicone scraper, to scrape it out as much as possible, and then when you do your next batch, you just swirl whatever's left back into your alcohol, so you never waste it.
Silicone's the key word. And they got silicone bowls, it doesn't stick.
Yeah, it doesn't stick. Any more questions?
Can you talk more about the essential oil?
The essential oils. So I've been a aromatherapist for 25 years, and I love doing aromatherapy. It's the most amazing. You get the most amazing results. You can put a few drops of lavender in a room with crazy kids and dogs, and everybody will chill out. I've seen some really good results with healing. Colds and flu, I've been making a cold and flu remedy for years and years that I would sell to my friends that worked in the emergency at the hospital, and they would use it as a hand cleaner. First, here's some. I usually have one with me somewhere. Oh. Apparently not today. Sorry. But I make a whole range of essential oil mixtures. I make one for PMS. I've made a lot of aphrodisiac ones. I've made sleep time ones. Some people have trouble waking up in the morning, so I make ones that are really nice for the shower to wake you up. So I combined that knowledge that I was using more for helping people feel better. I started looking more into the medicinal aspects of the essential oils, and that's how I came up with my formulas for the vaginal ones. They're called Yoni Care, and I have the 4 formulations. And the women that I've tested them with have reported amazing results. So I've only been making them a few months. Any questions about essential oils?
What would you use for PMS?
For PMS, I use lavender, chamomile, and clary sage. So those are clary sage and chamomile. Chamomile is, and when you use these essential oils, you have to be very, very careful because you're putting them in a very, very sensitive zone. So my suppositories each contains a total of 1/2 to 1 drop per suppository of essential oils. And if you make a synergy of oils, you don't need more than that. So don't think that, oh well, you know, we're going to put like 6 or 7 drops in these suppositories. Please don't do that.
And menopause, what essential oils for menopause?
Menopause, I use an essential oil called Vitex, as well as lavender. I use lavender in most things that I make because I find it's calming, it reduces pain, it makes you feel happy, and it's good for any kind of owie that you could possibly have. Cuts, burns, scrapes, bruises.
And do you have a particular brand of essential oils that you use?
As a matter of fact, I do. I use, it's a small company in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. It's called Ray Dunphy Aromatics. And I know Ray personally, well, I knew Ray, sadly she passed away from breast cancer, but her mandate was to go and visit every single distillery that she sourced her oils from. And she traveled the world several times to make sure that the oils that she sourced were the best that they could possibly be. So Ray Dunphy, D-U-N-P-H-Y, and they're located in Calgary. I think the company's called True Essence, possibly, is her label. And if you buy a lot, or you're a aromatherapist, they do very good wholesale prices.
So doTERRA oils, because I'm
So I went on a retreat last year, and the lady, I guess she had to satisfy investors to bring money in, so she was very pushy with her products, and she kept on asking me to buy her doTERRA oils, and I happened to have a bunch of mine, so I said, well, why don't we, I've got my oils, why don't we do a comparison? You're an aromatherapist, I'm an aromatherapist, let's try them out. Well, we opened her frankincense first, and she smelled it, and I smelled it, and then I let her smell mine. She put hers aside. So because they're a multi-level marketing company, they can't afford to make the oils as high quality as someone as small as the Ray Dunphy company. They're a very small company. They can afford to give you good oils at the same or less price than you pay for doTERRA. I find that doTERRA is incredibly expensive. I think I pay about 1/4 of what the doTERRA oils are.
No, I mean natural.
Naturopathics.
Yeah, what herbs would you recommend?
So it would depend on what is it in the throat, or what
I think it's just an external one that's floating up around the thyroid, sort of externally.
Okay, so
not me personally.
Yeah, so you would start taking the resin internally for sure right away, and then I'm a big believer in castor oil, and I would use the resin infused in castor oil and do packs as a topical, because that's going to be one of your best methods of getting into the system. And then add some essential oils, frankincense definitely, and
repeat the question to the microphone, just so they can hear. The microphone, just so
I'm very interested in what you're saying. So
oh, sorry. We're talking about a cancer of the throat, but it's not inside the throat. It's wrapping around, so it's more of a cancer of the neck, right?
Yeah, so it's around the thyroid, sort of external cancer, sort of sitting here, and I was just sort of wondering what are the naturopathic and essences that may be useful.
So for that, I said I would start with internal, taking the cannabis resin internally and work up to 1 gram a day. That's always what Rick Simpson says. And then the other suggestion I have would be to do castor oil packs. And you get a flannel and you soak it in castor oil, and then you apply it and put plastic over it. Now that castor oil is reusable time and time again. You just have to add a bit more castor oil.
Every day you add?
Yeah, every day you would add a bit more you'd infuse your castor oil with some resin, or you could put the resin directly on the area and then infuse your castor oil with frankincense, some lavender. For some reason, cypress comes to mind. I'm sometimes a bit intuitive. So maybe some cypress essential oils would work really well as a topical. And then apply the pack and leave it there for an hour, 2 hours. If you can apply heat, that would help as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Hold the mic.
I said lavender and cypress, but that may only apply, it's a bit of an intuitive thing, so that may only apply to this particular situation. That's just what came to mind, so that's what I'm going with.
What do you suggest for chronic headaches, like tension type headaches or migraines?
Migraines?
No migraines.
So again, the resin, but reduced into or extended into what we call, it's called Mct Coconut Oil. It's a liquid coconut oil. It doesn't go rancid, and it's good for you because it's called medium chain triglycerides, and they're used by the body rather than stored. So I would recommend, if you have access to resin, sometimes tinctures work as well, but I use a strain called Purple Kush for migraines in particular. So probably 1 gram of resin diluted into a 15 ml dropper bottle, and you probably take 3 to 5 drops twice a day, below where you're going to feel high. It depends on the person, but I think 3 to 5 drops is what most of the migraine patients that I work with, that's what they take.
Is there any success?
The top migraine specialist in British Columbia refers all these patients to me for cannabis medicine.
Also, tension type headaches or just migraines?
Any kind of headaches, but migraines, with tension headaches, you can take it at the time, but with migraines, it's important that you do a daily dose. You don't just dose when you have a migraine. If you have migraines, you need to dose on a daily basis, because it's an endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome.
Really? That's amazing.
Migraines, IBS, and fibromyalgia are all connected, and fibromyalgia and IBS are all connected. They're all in the same basic. They all have the same basic root, and the naturopath I work with suggests that it's an endocannabinoid deficiency. And once you start feeding the cannabinoids with cannabis, some people need very low doses, but some people need very, very high doses. It depends on each person's individual cannabinoid system and how full or how low it is.
And it can correct it long term.
It can correct it long term, yes.
What sort of oil would you, what kind of strain would you use for OCD if someone's having a scruple?
If they're having what?
OCD, like as in scruple.
Oh, OCD. Again, you want a heavy indica, like a Purple Kush, because you're trying to tone down their activity. I work with calming. I work with a young man. He's 30. Oh, look, there they are. Thank you. I work with a young man who's 30 years old, and he he's severely autistic at about his mental age is that of a 2-year-old. And his mother asked for cannabis medicine, but she wanted CBDs. So we tried a CBD medicine, and it was a Haley's Comet. And he had 1 drop, and it affected his brain so much that he went into all his activities for 11 hours. His, what do they call Tourette? Not Tourette's, but his OCD, autism activities. So the next thing she tried was Purple Kush. And she gave him 1 drop, and she said, that was 1.5 years ago, and she says he's been like a lamb ever since. He takes 1 drop in the morning, 1 drop in the afternoon, and 3 drops for bed. And he was overweight. He weighed over 250 pounds. In a year, he lost 50 pounds. And at the age of 30, he was able to concentrate enough to be able to go out and get a job with the local hydro people. They have a what do you call it? Graffiti buster company. So he worked with the graffiti buster all summer.
Does he still get the screw, like the
No, he's autistic now.
so I thought he had protected.
He has all those things too, and the Haley's Comet, which is what we used, that had CBDs in it, increased it. So now whenever there's any OCD, any kind of brain activity, I always recommend a heavy indica.
And can it put it in remission, or do you have to keep this up?
You have to do it on a regular basis. It may go into remission, I don't know. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just speaking from experiences that I've had with patients that I've worked with.
And it's got to be the really good stuff, like how Rick Simpson makes it. Like
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Concentrated resin.
I heard this comment, and I'm not going to put you on the spot or anything, but I thought it was really interesting. There's an article, alright, and what it was saying was, just simplistically put, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it made me think, the difference between an indica, most indica strains and sativa strains, indica is calming, say, sativa uplifting, whatever you want to say, is the amount of the myrcene terpenes. And apparently the indica has so much more myrcene terpenes in it compared to sativa, and myrcene we know comes from mangoes. It's that terpene. So I thought, did you have a comment on that? Because it is a potentiator. And, I don't know, do you have a
so
comment on that?
the way I see indica and sativa being different is, yes, is the terpenes that are in the plant. I don't know, I can't speak to if it's the myrcene actually, but it is the difference between how the indica plant affects us and how the sativa plant affects us is the terpenes and the essential oils, essentially, how they work on our brains and our bodies.
How can you say it's that not minor cannabinoids? Because we've been waiting for the North Americans for a long time to report to us a series of HPLCs and terpene contents on an indica and a sativa as pure as you can get. So we can do some sort of subtraction analysis and know.
UBC just finished a study on that. They were gathering, you could bring, any dispensary in Vancouver could bring a sample to the lab in UBC, and I haven't read I don't even know if the report is out. I know they were doing it, and I heard it was either coming out or it was out. So the information is out there now.
Yeah, it may be out there.
No, they did. They tested hundreds of plants for terpenes at UBC. I just haven't followed.
But our important lesson is which one is described as indica and sedating, and which one is described as sativa and stimulating, and what is the phytochemical differences.
Well,
what I found, I mean, because we have very limited access to analysis and we've had to do it our own in-house, but sometimes some of the plants have THCV and some of the minor cannabinoids like dwarf the amount of input that the terpenes have. And myrcene is present in all of them anyway, it's just a question of what proportion. Yeah. Right? But yeah, we look for that data with great interest.
I haven't seen it, and I go by what the plant looked like. If it looks like an indica, because I go to the growers, and if it looks
more on what it does.
Pardon?
Isn't it more on what it does, the effect than its appearance? I'm sure you have an indica appearance, but it's the issue of what its effect is.
But in general, an indica is a short plant that has thick leaves, and a sativa is a tall plant, and it takes many more weeks to grow a sativa than it takes an indica.
What I've found, and it's in the American literature, that one is because it's got some CBD content in the indica, and that's why it's sedating and things like that. We've found there's a blend of CBDs in indica and sativa, and there's no real...
No, the CBD has no effect because I work with plants that have CBDs and no CBDs.
You can't say there's no effect, it has a dramatic modulating effect.
Pardon?
It has a dramatic modulating effect.
But for example, I only work with 3 main strains, and I don't have a purple kush that has CBD in it. I work with a catatonic, which is a part sativa that has CBD in it, and Haley's Comet.
Is it Haley's Comet or Haley's Hope?
Haley's Comet is the one I work with that was developed by Haley Rose's mom for her seizures, and because I'm part of the family, I get some of their medicine.
Can we see how you close them?
Sorry?
So you're gonna close them?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna.
Do you think that just suppositories will give a THC reading with the drug?
Oh yes, because it goes into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
Oh, now, alright, what time's the parade, guys, and everything?
It's 2:30, so I'm
Yeah,
going to do this
so
real quick.
it's very important. I mean, I know this is so important too,
No,
but I am honour and duty bound to advise you to support the protest. But those that really want to listen to this delightful lady, stay as well.
Oh yeah, we just reached out.
Yeah, the protest parades. But the good news is they actually come down here, I think, as well. You'll see them, they'll come through.
The hairdryer's not working, so I will very quickly tell you what I do is I prefer to rip them into 5 because then you can easily hold them. And so you blow the hairdryer across. Let me see if I can get the other thing. So it's really simple. You take the hairdryer and you just blow it at the very top of the suppository mold on both sides. And then you take your hair crimper and you just give it a final little crimp. And it's done, and none of this is working, I'm sorry, it was working earlier today. So, and that makes sure that they're sealed, and if they should be left out in a hot place, that they don't run out.
Try it now.
One here?
It needs to go on the...
It needs to be a flat one.
Easily fixed.
Yeah, just
Okay. Ah, okay. Easily fixed.
Now, let me hold one item.
Yay! It's melting again, so it's not working as well as my special hair dryer at home.
Does it have a little, like, reducer on it?
Oh, you still need the adapter though.
And this one, oh.
You need the adapter.
So if you have a hair dryer with one of those concentrators, that'll just see how it's slumping. So normally you just grip this like this, and then you'd be all done. And I think that's all for my speech. And I know you guys are already off to the tray.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
I didn't catch the start of your presentation at all. you explain that THC isn't having a psychoactive effect on the brain using it in this method?
When you use suppositories, there is less of a psychoactive. You still get some of the high, but not. I mean, you can take 100 milligrams of resin, and you'll feel a little like you might not be able to walk really well, and you'll be. But your head will you'll still be able to think. Where if you ingested that same 100 milligrams, you'd be flat pretty well, unless you're a heavy user.
Sure. So maybe like before bed it would be a nice time.
Before bed, suppositories are awesome. They help you sleep. If you have low back problems, any kind of sciatic problems, you don't need a high dose. A very low dose, because the absorption, I was explaining the absorption rate, you're absorbing 60 to 80% of the cannabinoids in the suppository. So you don't need as much. It saves a lot of your cannabinoids. So if you're eating it, you're actually wasting about a third. But for cancer, the doctor I work with still uses the ingestion method. So I can't say don't ever eat it. It just depends on what your condition is. So lower body, pain, PMS,
just as like a general overall health.
Prostate cancer, a lot of prostate cancer, bladder cancer patients use it because it's directly in the area.
And I think you also mentioned in how far the suppository and like it's further into the colon rather than the rectum.
You do, apparently you do get a little higher. It hasn't happened to me yet, I tried.
Okay.
So I find that doesn't matter where I place it, I get basically the same effect.
Good. Thank you.
Here.